Hey everyone, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 5 demo for the piece I call Bow to Hathor. So, here we are, the last character, for now, in the monster character design series that I've been doing since March. It's been super fun, and I really would like to keep doing them in some way, but I feel like it's time to kind of move on, at least as far as very repetitive posting goes. But I will say that those of you in the last video who said that you wanted to see Trish get finished, I will finish Trish. So Trish will be like a bonus monster for the series since she's a companion piece to Bert. So we will have a Trish video, but that'll be, again, like I said, bonus. So the way that I consider Trish is almost as if I should have done her when I did Bert, but I didn't, and everybody was excited to see her, so I went ahead and did that. But this character, Hathor, is the closest thing that this story has to a main villain. Now, I wanted to have a mummy in the setup for a while, and in this lineup, but I just didn't. Trying to kind of figure out what that cool angle could be for a mummy. So the angle that I ended up taking was this. She's kind of like, she's after general world domination. I mean, at least that is what everybody assumes she's after in the beginning. I'm not going to talk about her general motives, because if everything ends up going somewhere with this, I'd hate to spill the beans on the whole thing in some YouTube video here. But you can see, based on a little bit in her skin color and a little bit in the kind of like effect she has, where you see that glowy part where her bones exposed, that she has excuse me, a similar situation to Larry, the first character in the series. I said that I kind of wanted to tie it all up, and here we are. So this character has kind of like a mysterious past, but she's afflicted with the same thing that sort of caused Larry to be Larry. You'll also notice that she has this kind of like sarcophagus, what's the other word for a coffin thing on her head, on top of her head, just like Sekhmet 02 did. Sekhmet, when she referred to who she protected, who she was the bodyguard for, it was this character here, Hathor. So those two are related in the sense that at one point Sekhmet was beholden to protecting Hathor and then somehow broke free. As I explained in that video, Sekhmet is a robot and can technically get reprogrammed, although in her current state she wishes to remain free of Hathor's control. So we now know that those two characters are related, and then this character and Larry are related. So we've got some relations connecting everybody. This is actually something I mentioned in a previous video, that I wanted to get a relationship chart together for everyone. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to do what I mentioned, which was a breakdown of the entire lineup and sort of discussing the dynamics of this lineup, and then also pair that with a relationship chart, and then that to me will be the absolute closing out of this for now. I know there are some people out there that really want to see this keep going and they want to know more about it, so to me that would be like my love letter to those people. And then to the people that want to see my channel go into other pieces, obviously I've been trying to sprinkle those in there as well, but that will be a greater focus going on. So let's talk about her actual design for a bit now. She is a sorceress. You can see here in the rough sketch, I originally wanted to have the magic almost look like a snake, but then I kind of decided that that was going to be a little distracting. There was already a lot going on with this character. You can also see that in her original color palette, she's kind of like that traditional Egyptian color palette, where you've got these pale tones, and then you've got the bright yellow stripy thing for the really classic Egyptian look. Obviously what I'm trying to go for here is speak to a lot of tropes. That's kind of the point with this series, is we're speaking to the tropes that inspire this, right? All the classic monster stuff, and then some other monster stuff throughout the years, and that's what influenced this new take on these things. But even though that was a more classic Egyptian look, I felt like I wasn't getting some of that that pizzazz that this lineup has had. I mentioned that actually in my Bert video, and even a little bit in the Crystal video, that there's a couple of characters in here that go towards a little more naturalistic materials, and that's because I think my brain was just solving them in a different way, kind of saying like, oh well, this is leather, so it will be leather, it'll be brown, but then when I was working on Crystal, I was like, why would I do that? Like, let's keep some of that intensity of, like, let's say a bunch of the other characters. Same thing is true with this character, is I had her in these sort of, I mean, yeah, she had green skin and she had the pink glowy bits, but she was largely a more standard quote-unquote palette. So now what I did was I decided to bring in more of the dark colors and get her back into like the purples and stuff that are in this lineup. And also, I mean, that obviously powers the evil side, right? You either go like red and black or purple and green, and you get like an evil character out of it. And I didn't really want to think of it quite that simplistically. It was more about, I knew I wanted to keep the pink glow and the greenish skin because I wanted her to tie to Larry, but I needed to come up then with colors that would make her, that would go really well with that, and it was like the purple. Also, if you go back and look at Larry, he's got sort of these really dark reddish purple pants, and it's kind of cool if you see those two characters side by side. They actually work together quite nicely, despite being designed months apart on different ends of the character lineup. But they relate to each other, and that's really interesting to me. Also, of course, the wraps are the same color as well, the wrappings. So when it comes to the design, what I wanted to try and do was I kind of wanted to have fun with the classic Egyptian aesthetic. I think that part of that genre of IP thing, or whatever you want to call it, is that it sort of established these like cartoonishly loud and bold design aesthetics that would then be associated with certain things like Frankenstein and Wolfman and the Mummy and all these things. So I wanted to really play off of that. So we've got a lot of really standard shit here. We've got like the scarab. Well, it starts as her belt buckle, but then I decided to make it a flat element on her dress. But we've got the scarab aspect. We've got the dark blue, black, and gold striping. We've got the like sarcophagus thing on her forehead, which, if you'll remember in the Sekhmet video, was also a reference to Giant Robo, and that's the whole idea with that character. And so we're just trying to speak to a lot of these tropes while tying her to Larry and making her like her own character to some degree. So there was some things to balance here, but honestly it wasn't, these things aren't like diametrically opposed or anything. These are things that are pretty easy to reconcile. So since we've got all this going on, we've got her own loud color palette, the pink glows, and then we've also got the big green magic, and then we've got the like environmental like fog and glows and all that kind of stuff. That's one of the reasons why I decided to take the like snake aspect out of the magic. I still don't think that would be a bad idea. I think in general you could do something like that. It's just for this illustration I just wasn't feeling it anymore. But having all of her magic be like kind of snake based, like visually, I mean, that would be super cool. It would be kind of like, speaking of Giant Robo, it'd be kind of like Issei in Giant Robo when he brings down the lightning, and then the lightning turns into the big like electrical snakes and just destroys all those guys, which could be the coolest 10 seconds in anything ever. But anyways, that type of a thing would be really cool if all of her magic comes out as these energy bolts and then they arc and then morph into snakes and then they destroy things. I think that would be super, super cool. But she does more than just like destructive magic. She is, after all, a sorceress, and so she has lots of things at her disposal, like all kind of mystical, creepy, bad characters. She just has a litany of magic abilities, like she could mind control, or she could scry, she could do lots of things. She could do whatever she needs to do for the story right now, because this whole thing isn't that defined yet. So just like whatever I feel like, she's able to do it. So there's still more balancing, by the way, that's going to happen with her color palette. Right now she's all like black. It's a dark gray, but it kind of reads as black. And while that's cool and it's nice and stark, it doesn't give us quite the colorful aspect that this palette has had. So you'll see in a second here, that dress is, yeah, you can see right there, we pull the dress more purple. we lighten and then eventually saturate that strip at the bottom. We've also taken the gold now and made it less of a pure yellow, and it's pulled over more to orange to kind of bring that down just a touch, have it be a little less cheap looking, because sometimes raw yellow can look cheap in certain environments, not environments, but certain schemes. And here we're doing the scarab, which you'll see me in a minute start to warp it into trying to get it to work as the belt buckle thing. But then the whole thing with that was that I always felt that area was noisy anyhow. So you'll see that eventually I decide, no, this isn't working. Instead, let's put it like an embroidered symbol kind of on her dress and then add another button there instead. And that I think works a lot better. It really clears up what's happening in that region. It makes her figure clearer without jamming it up too much with that scarab, that 3D scarab sort of place there. So now we're moving into the form shadows, where it's a multiply with a purple. This file, like all of them in the series, has the exact same lighting scheme across the board. All the shadows are this sort of light pale purple, and all of the highlights are a light blue, very light blue, like max lightness, all the way at the top blue with a lowered opacity. And the rim light is painted in white and then has a new fill that's orange, and then it's blurred and set to, color dodge and stuff. Or not color dodge in Procreate, set to add in Procreate. And then the bounce light coming up is just color picked. So we'll see all of that stuff as it goes. But I just kind of wanted to reiterate that this is the exact same lighting scheme as all of the others. So if you go back to previous videos, something I always recommend, if you go back to Dead Larry, which was the first in this monster series, you'll start seeing all of the characters and how they're all built. And as time goes on, I more or less, depending on the video, explain the process, and then you can see how it's all done. So you saw a second ago too, her skin got dark. That's because I lowered the opacity on that in order to make sure that I got these fingers really nice and clear. Basically her like head, neck, left hand, and then like her index finger and her thumb of her right hand are all in the same layer. And then the fingers start to go on separate layers after that, so that I can paint them all in and keep them all separate. The only kind of exception to me keeping things separate is the bandages are all on the same layer. So on the finger, I think the arms are all on the same layer. Now I can't remember. No, the arms are on different layers. All the bandages are on their own different layers, but what I want to highlight here is that her right pinky, how it's bent in, and then it's got that one little strip of bandage, that's just all on its own layer, that strip of bandage, and it's basically her finger is like cut out so that bandage is there. That's how that's done, just to try and save on layers, because this character had a fair number of layers in order to keep everything really separate. So another thing with the character lineup, if you noticed, is there's actually more women in this lineup than there are men. That was something that was really important to me. I just think that type of representation is important, and I think that it also makes for a more interesting cast, so that we aren't looking at the same thing for the millionth time. So what we have, as far as the lineup is concerned, is 16 total characters. Blob has 2 forms, so that's 17 pieces, but 16 characters. And then of those 16 characters, 9 of them are women, and technically Blob is an it. Blob represents itself as a female. If you remember its story, it likes that image because it saw like an 80s exercise video, and it tries to mimic that. So Blob represents itself as a female, so if you include that, that's 10. But like it's still just an it. So I would say that it's 9 women in the cast. And I just think that's more fun. Like more fun from like more fun to do, more fun to watch, more interesting in general. And trying to get the cast diverse in general was important to me. And obviously we're not dealing with like humans aside from Hector, which actually I should point out that that's just the cast that's there right now, because there's like 3 kind of villains in that lineup. But anyways, Hector is the only like true human. There's characters like Zola, who comes from a lineage of vampires, but I honestly still haven't sorted out the way vampires work in this yet. Do they all have to be bitten? Can you be born a vampire? Like, I just truly haven't sorted that out. So her, Dead Larry, maybe Hazel. There's like some characters in the lineup that could have been human and then were turned, is basically my point. That's where I'm trying to go with this. So we haven't really totally sorted it out. And the same thing is true with this character, Hathor. She could have been human and then was made undead, or not. Like, you know, who knows, right, with that full story. But that trying to sort out like that diversity when everybody is technically like not human in some way is interesting, because you want to like do right by people, but at the same time you're trying to like come up with characters that have like red skin and stuff like that. So it's just really like a trick to try and make sure that you're getting good representation while also having to be like, well, these characters are just super bizarre, you know. So speaking of representation, or in this case misrepresentation, if you saw the posting for this character on Instagram, you would see that the quote, because I always try to put some sort of a story-based quote for each character, this character's quote is from Larry. And he's talking about how Hathor isn't even her real name, which is trying to hint a little bit at the fact that maybe this character is trying to build herself up a little bit more than than what she actually is. She's trying to sort of pass herself off as this like Egyptian goddess, undead mummy thing. But Larry's kind of hinting at the fact that like there's more there, or depending on how you look at it, there's less there. Larry doesn't know what her real name is, but he just kind of heard that that's not her real name and that she's kind of putting up a front, which in some ways is similar to Vixler, if you remember him. He's the faun who tries to portray himself as a demon, although in his case, he's not the only one who does that. The fauns come in different colors and different shapes. Their horns can be different. They can be fatter, they can be skinnier, they can be more muscly. They can be a lot of variations. But the ones who are red and have the black horns, for the most part, the black horns, they try to pass themselves off as a demon, as a legit demon. And so that is like just a thing that a lot of them try to do. Not all of them, but a lot of them. In her case, in Hathor's case, she is specifically just trying to pull some shit off and sort of be more than she is, because she's trying to like strike fear and kind of gather followers in a way. So where are we at right now with the process? We're in the middle of doing the direct shadow. The phases that we still have to do is we're going to hit the highlights. I'll say highlights. They're not truly highlights. A lot of people consider the highlights to be some of the brightest points. What I mean is more the light. When I'm doing my flats, what I'm essentially trying to achieve here is a mid-tone. And then we go in with lighter and darker colors to establish the lighter values and the darker values. This is one way of painting. There are many ways of painting. However, this is a nice controlled way, and as I said before, this is the way that I've kind of tried to develop in order to maximize layer efficiency in Procreate. Now, there are going to be people out there who paint on one layer and only one layer, and they're really, really good at that, and to them I say, awesome, keep doing that. But that's not me, and so when it comes to layers, I use a lot of them. Procreate, not the best app for when you want to when you want to use a ton of layers. So this is the method by which I've developed for here. I actually will paint in different techniques depending on either the look I'm trying to go for, the amount of time I have to do something, or in this case, if I'm working in Procreate or Photoshop. This is something that I highlighted in a previous video where I compared my Photoshop layers to my Procreate layers, which you can check out. It's not too far back in the video history, but I just wanted to highlight again that I think that this gets really good return. The methods that I use here get a really good return for the layer count that I'm using and the cleanliness and the adaptability. At any point in here, I can just change my flat layers and everything will react appropriately. Occasionally, you might get into a problem where you went from something that was really really light to something really dark, and since I use my highlight layers aren't set to a blend mode. Like right there, you can see I'm starting to put the blue in. That means that those will probably be a little bit too bright on darker things if I change something from light to dark, because that makes it so that it goes from less visible to way more visible. A way that you could get around that, if you prefer, although I particularly liked this look, which is why I kept it the same across all these pieces, what you could do is you could set your highlight layer to something like an overlay. If you set those lighting layers to something like an overlay or a soft light, depending on what you're going for, your colors will react underneath. There will still be some play depending on what you set them to, where you change something from light to dark, it could go away. It could either like get more intense or less intense depending on the direction you're going. But my point is that you can set it up so that every one of your lighting layers, let's call them, is reactive to the colors underneath. That is absolutely possible and a totally applicable way of doing it. Applicable way? Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it's applicable. It's a totally acceptable way, would be the right way to say that. And way back, if you go back to my furthest back you can on DeviantArt, you can probably start to find a couple of pieces where I'm doing like a purple shadow and a yellow highlight, and the yellow highlight is set to overlay, and I'm adjusting the opacities exactly the same way as I do here. In the past, I've teased about the idea of me doing kind of like a style retrospective on my style, and I still am planning on doing that. It's just a way harder video to put together than a lot of these, so it's taking me time. But I think that it'll be a helpful video when we really get to it. But if you don't want to wait for that video, I have never deleted anything, at least I don't think I've ever deleted anything, from my DeviantArt page. So that is the longest record of my work online. And you can go like mine that and just kind of see based on the output, like, oh, he did this here, oh, he really sucked, oh, he still sucks, that kind of thing. So the stage we're at now is we've got the first round of highlights in. You can see that we've got the background all sorted out. We also threw in that rim light briefly. Now I'm going in and doing what? What am I doing? As he gets closer and closer to the screen to try and figure out what he's doing in the piece. I'm still doing the highlight layers. We're up on the face region, on the lips and stuff. This, I believe, is the second round of lighting. Yep, you can see it right there where it goes in over the metal right there. Or not the metal, but I mean, maybe it's metal. I don't know. I honestly didn't decide what material that was. I was being a little bit lazy on that part, I guess. But anyways, that's the stage we're at. We've got the glows on all the glowy bits. We already did the rim light from that back orange light. The last things that we have to do are the glowy rim light from the bottom. And then we'll turn on the sort of like fog. You can also see that I kind of did a different background here. Oh, I just put a highlight over her upper torso and face just to bring some attention to there. You can see in the background I actually did something different with her to make it a little bit more mystical and spooky. Instead of it being a background that goes from dark to light as it comes closer to the camera, I put a green spotlight sort of behind the dimmer smoke, and that's just to create like a creepier kind of vibe in that background there. We'll still put the fog on top, and then you'll see how it all kind of comes together. So here I just used a random brush. I don't remember which one it was, but I just wanted to use something that had texture. Part of the look and feel I try to achieve with these pieces is that they're polished, but they are using rough brushes, so we get kind of these like occasional little rough bits in there. And so now I'm just adding these extra little glowy chunks around, duplicating, blurring, the usual glow stuff, which I have a glow demo that I did a while back. If you go back and look through the titles, you'll find that one, because I think I say like glow demo like pretty clearly in there. And here we're coming to the very, very end of Hathor, the closest thing this story has to a main villain, and we are in the final stages now. This right here is the final version. The self-proclaimed last mummy on Earth, Hathor, the evil. Well, I don't know if that's really her title, but that's what I'm going to say for now. So anyways, she was super fun to really wrap up and kind of bring this lineup to a close. Like I said, we're still going to get a bonus Trish video that will be coming soonish. Let's take a look at, here's the rough sketch so you can kind of see how this piece traveled a little bit. And then we go to what are ultimately the final flats right there. And then we bring it home with all of the shading and effects and all of that kind of stuff. So, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for supporting the monster character design series, and I hope to see you on the next video. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.